The warning came on a Tuesday morning, though nobody on Earth would remember that detail later. What they would remember was the voice that interrupted every broadcast, every screen, every device connected to a network across the planet. Voice spoke in perfect English and Chinese and Hindi and every other language simultaneously. It was not a friendly voice. Captain Hyun-woo Park was drinking coffee on the orbital defense station when his entire control panel lit up like a Christmas tree. Every sensor screened at once, every warning system activated. For a terrifying moment, he thought they were under attack. Then the screens cleared and a face appeared. It was not a human face. The being had 4 eyes arranged in a square pattern. Its skin looked like polished metal, and when it spoke, its mouth did not quite match the words. "People of Earth," it said, "we are the Galactic Council. We have monitored your species for 300 of your years. You have been found dangerous and unfit for independent development." Hyun-woo's hands froze on his controls. Dangerous? Earth had barely made it to Mars. They had 7 ships capable of faster-than-light travel, and those could barely manage trips to nearby star systems. What could possibly be dangerous about humanity? The alien continued, as if reading from a script. "You have 90 standard galactic days to comply with our terms. You will surrender all military vessels. You will cease expansion beyond your home system. You will submit to Council authority. If you refuse, your species will be eliminated. This is not negotiable. This is not a discussion. This is your only warning." Then the transmission ended. Every screen went dark. Every speaker went silent. For 10 seconds, Earth held its breath. Then the panic began. Ambassador Ji-won Kim was in Geneva when the message played. She was supposed to be giving a speech about trade agreements between the Earth colonies. Instead, she found herself in an emergency session with every major government on the planet. The room was chaos. Everyone was shouting. Some people wanted to surrender immediately. Others wanted to fight. Most were simply terrified. "We have to negotiate," Ji-won said, raising her voice above the noise. "We can't just accept extinction. There must be room for discussion." "Did you hear the same message I did?" Admiral Taeyang Choi shot back. He was a tall man with gray hair and hard eyes. "They said this was not negotiable. They've already made their decision about us. Then we make them change it." Ji-won insisted. President Do-yeon-roo sat at the head of the table, his face pale. He looked like he had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. "Can we fight them?" he asked quietly. Admiral Choi pulled up a holographic display. "Our intelligence teams have been analyzing the transmission. The signal came from outside our solar system, but reached every device on Earth simultaneously. That means they have technology we can't even comprehend. If they can do that, what else can they do?" "Doctor." Minji Kang stood up. She was young for a lead scientist, barely 30, with sharp eyes and tired hands from too many late nights in the lab. "I've been reviewing the transmission data. There's something hidden in the signal. Compressed files. I think they sent us proof of their claims." She pressed a button, and the room's screens filled with images. Planets burning. Cities crumbling. Species that looked nothing like humans, dead in vast numbers. 17 different worlds, all destroyed. All civilizations that had refused the Council's terms. The room fell silent. 90 days, President Roos said finally. "That's all we have." The next week was a blur of activity. Commander Seo Han found himself in charge of a project that seemed impossible. His orders were simple: prepare Earth's defenses. How he was supposed to defend against aliens who could destroy planets, nobody could tell him. He worked anyway. He ordered the construction of hidden weapons platforms throughout the asteroid belt. He had ships modified with new weapons that probably would not work. He trained crews for battles they would probably lose. But he worked because doing something felt better than doing nothing. Meanwhile, Yoonji Lee was having the best and worst week of her life. She was a quantum physicist used to theoretical problems in abstract mathematics. Now, suddenly, her research mattered more than anything else in the world. She had been working on quantum tunneling, trying to figure out how to move objects through folded space. It was supposed to be theoretical. Now, the government wanted it weaponized. They wanted it working in 90 days. It's impossible, she told her team. We'd need years of testing. Decades, probably. We have 83 days, her supervisor replied. So she worked, 20 hours a day, fueled by coffee and fear. Her team made breakthroughs that should have won Nobel Prizes. They barely noticed. There was no time for celebration, only more work. The council sent more messages as the deadline approached. Each one was colder than the last. They showed footage of their fleet gathering at the edge of the solar system. Thousands of ships, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. The message was clear: surrender or die. Earth's governments argued. Some nations wanted to give up. Others wanted to fight. The people protested in the streets, though nobody could agree on what they were protesting for. Some wanted peace at any cost. Others chanted about human dignity and freedom. The world had never been more divided. Jiwon tried to open communications with the council. She sent hundreds of messages. She offered compromises. She begged for more time. The council never responded. They simply sent countdown timers. 80 days, 70 days, 60 days. They don't care, Admiral Choi said during one meeting. They've made up their minds. We're insects to them. You don't negotiate with insects. You step on them. Then we make them see us differently, Jiwon said, but her voice lacked conviction. She was tired. They were all tired. President Ru addressed the world on day 60. His speech was broadcast everywhere. He spoke about human history, about all the times people had faced extinction and survived. He spoke about dignity and choice. He spoke about how Earth would not bow. The speech was inspiring. It was also terrifying, because everyone knew what it meant. Earth was choosing war. On day 89, the Council fleet moved. Sensors tracked them crossing into the inner solar system. They were not hurrying. They did not need to. Their message was simple. Your time is up. Captain Hyen Woo sat at his post on the orbital station, watching the approaching ships on his screens. He thought about his daughter on Earth. He thought about all the people who would die in the next few hours. He thought about humanity's last stand. Then, at 0347 hours on day 89, something impossible happened. Every council ship vanished. Not destroyed, not retreating. Simply gone, as if they had never existed at all. Hyen Woo stared at his empty screens, his heart pounding. He ran every diagnostic he knew. He checked every sensor twice. The results were the same. The Council fleet had disappeared without a trace. Captain Junho Song was eating breakfast on Mars when the alert started screaming. He dropped his fork and ran to the command center, still chewing. The other officers were already there, all staring at blank screens with confused expressions. "What happened?" he demanded. "They're gone, sir," the sensor operator said. Her voice shook slightly. "All of them. The entire Council fleet just vanished." Junho looked at the displays. Empty space where thousands of ships had been moments before. No debris, no energy signatures, no radiation, nothing at all. "Sensor malfunction?" he asked. "No, sir. All systems are working perfectly. They're just gone." Back on Earth, Ambassador Nario was in her office when the news reached her. She had been preparing another message to the Council, another useless attempt at communication. Now her assistant was telling her something that made no sense. "The fleet disappeared," the assistant repeated. "Every ship, simultaneously. Nari sat down slowly. That's not possible. It happened anyway. Within an hour, more reports came flooding in. The Council's communication network had gone silent. Their embassy stations throughout the galaxy were not responding. Their homeworlds were not answering calls. Nari started making calls of her own. She contacted every alien species that Earth had ever made contact with, all the minor civilizations that existed on the edges of Council space. What she learned made her blood run cold. The Council had not just vanished from Earth's solar system. They had vanished everywhere. Every Council member species, every ship, every outpost. Billions of individuals across hundreds of worlds, all gone at exactly the same moment. Only their empty buildings remained. Only their silent cities and abandoned ships. This is impossible, Nari said for the 100th time that day. Nobody disagreed with her, but it had happened anyway. Hana Shin worked for Earth Intelligence. Her job was to gather information, to understand threats, to figure out what enemies were planning. She was very good at her job. Right now, her job made no sense at all. She sat in a dark room surrounded by screens, reviewing data from across the galaxy. Every source said the same thing. The Council was gone. Not hiding, not retreating to some secret location. Simply erased from existence. What could do this? Her assistant asked. Hana did not answer. She was thinking. The Council had been the most powerful force in the galaxy for thousands of years. They had technology that made Earth look primitive. They had weapons that could destroy planets. And something had made them all disappear in an instant. Something more powerful than the Council. That thought kept her awake at night. The galaxy was in chaos. Species that had been under Council rule for generations suddenly found themselves free. Some celebrated. Others panicked. Trade routes collapsed. Wars broke out. Nobody knew what to do without the Council to enforce order. And everyone wanted to know what happened. Dr. Sunho. Yoon led the team that examined the Council ships floating, dead in space near Jupiter. The ships were intact. Everything was working. The life support systems were still running. There were half-eaten meals in the cafeterias. Logs that ended mid-sentence. It's like they just stopped existing, Sunho said, examining a command chair that still held the impression of someone who had been sitting there. One moment they were here. The next moment they were not. Inha Bay was a xenarchaeologist. She studied alien cultures and their history. Now she was studying the Council's abandoned databanks, trying to find clues. What she found disturbed her deeply. The Council had been watching humanity very carefully. They had files going back centuries. They had analyzed human psychology, human warfare, human potential. And they had been afraid. Look at this, she told Sunho, bringing up a file on the screen. This is from their security division. They called us Category 7. What does that mean? It's a threat classification. The highest one they had. There were only 3 Category 7 species in all of Council history. The other 2 were extinct. The Council destroyed them. Sunho felt cold. They were that afraid of us? Apparently. And look at this date. This file was updated 2 days before they vanished. It mentioned something called the failsafe. They searched through more files. The references to the failsafe were scattered and vague. Some kind of emergency protocol. Something about dangerous species and automatic responses. The files were incomplete, as if someone had deleted the important parts. But one thing was clear. The Council had known something might happen. They had been prepared for it. And they had still vanished. The news reached Earth's media within days. Reporters were calling it the greatest mystery in human history. Scientists were baffled. Religious leaders were claiming miracles or divine intervention. Conspiracy theorists had 1,000 different explanations. each more unlikely than the last. President Ru called another emergency meeting. The room was crowded with military officers, scientists, diplomats, and advisors. Everyone was talking at once. "Order," Ru said quietly. The room went silent. "What do we know for certain?" Admiral Choi stood up. "The council is gone. All of them. Their technology is intact, but there's nobody left to use it. Their ships are drifting. Their worlds are empty. Wherever they went all at once. And the timing?" Ru asked. "That's the disturbing part. They vanished at 0347 hours, precisely 14 hours before their ultimatum deadline would have expired. It's too specific to be coincidence." Jiwan spoke up. "The other species are starting to ask questions. Difficult questions. Why did this happen now? Why did it happen right before they were going to destroy us?" "They think we did it," Nari added. "They think humanity has some kind of weapon. They're afraid of us." The room erupted in protests. How could humanity have done this? Earth's most advanced weapon could barely damage one council ship, let alone make billions of people vanish across the entire galaxy. "It doesn't matter if it makes sense," Nari said loudly. "They're afraid. Fear doesn't need logic." Dr. Kong raised her hand hesitantly. "There might be another explanation." Everyone looked at her. "My team was working on quantum tunneling research. Theoretical physics about moving objects through folded space. I never got it to work, but the math suggested something interesting. If you created a large enough quantum field, you could potentially move matter out of normal space." "You're saying your research did this?" Admiral Choi asked skeptically. "No, I'm saying someone else's research might have. The council had technology far beyond ours. What if they were experimenting with something similar? What if it went wrong?" It was a theory. One theory among many. But it was something Hannah kept investigating. She pulled together reports from across the galaxy, looking for patterns. What she found made her more uncomfortable each day. The council had monitoring stations on 17 worlds scattered throughout their territory. These stations had all been watching Category 7 species, humans, and all 17 stations had logged the same thing on the day before the vanishing. Protocol Omega activated. Nobody knew what Protocol Omega meant. The files had been erased, but Hannah was starting to suspect. The timing was too perfect. The council threatening humanity. Humanity refusing to surrender. The council moving in to attack, and then vanishing at the exact moment. Earth should have been destroyed. This was not random. This was not an accident. Someone or something had removed the council from existence. And it happened because of Earth. The emergency assembly convened on a neutral space station orbiting a dead star. Representatives from 200 species crowded into the hall. Most had been subjects of the council. Some had been allies. All of them wanted answers. Captain Yuna Choi stood at the podium, representing Earth. She wore her dress uniform and tried to look confident. Inside, she was terrified. The crowd was not friendly. A tall alien with 6 arms and purple skin stood up first. "Let us be direct, human. The council vanishes after threatening your world. This cannot be coincidence. We don't know what happened any more than you do," Yuna replied carefully. "You refused their ultimatum. You were the only species in council history to refuse and survive. Now they are gone, and you remain. You expect us to believe you had nothing to do with this?" The hall erupted in agreement. Voices shouted from all sides. Some were angry. Some were afraid. All of them were looking at Yuna like she was dangerous. Ambassador Minho Park stood beside her. He was an older man, experienced in diplomacy. He raised his hands for silence. "We understand your concerns," he said calmly. "We have opened all our research facilities for inspection. We have shared all our data. Earth does not have the capability to do what you're suggesting. Our most advanced weapons could barely damage one council ship, making billions of people vanish across the entire galaxy. That is beyond anything we can even imagine. Then explain the timing, another alien demanded. This one looked like a floating crystal that spoke through vibrations. Your deadline expires. The council vanishes. You claim this is chance? We don't know, Minot admitted. But accusation without evidence helps nobody. We should be working together to understand what happened. The assembly continued for hours. Earth's representatives showed their weapon systems. They explained their technology. They proved over and over that humanity could not have done this. Some species seemed convinced. Others remained suspicious. The problem was simple. Earth looked guilty, even though they were innocent. Back on Earth, things were getting worse. Investigator Yemen K.O. had been given a difficult job. His orders were to investigate Earth's own government and military. Find out if any secret programs might have caused this. Find out if anyone was lying. He did not like his job, but he did it anyway. What he found disturbed him. There were classified programs he had never heard of. Research projects with limited documentation. Budget items that made no sense. Nothing obviously suspicious, but too many small mysteries. Dr. Kong, he said during one interview, your quantum research. Who authorized it? The United Earth Science Council, Minji replied. She looked tired. Everyone looked tired these days. And they understood what you were trying to develop? I gave them regular reports. Everything was documented. Can I see those reports? Minji pulled them up. Yemen read through page after page of complex mathematics and theoretical physics. Most of it made no sense to him. This section here, he pointed at one page. You mentioned potential applications for mass displacement. What does that mean? It means moving large objects through folded space. Hypothetically, could that make something vanish? Minji hesitated. In theory, if you created a large enough quantum field, you could move matter outside normal spacetime. But that's purely theoretical. My research never got close to working. And even if it did work, it would require energy sources we don't have. You would need to harvest the output of an entire star. Yemen made notes. But it's possible? A lot of things are theoretically possible. That doesn't mean they're real. He interviewed dozens of people. Military commanders, scientists, politicians, everyone who might know something. The picture that emerged was confusing. Earth had been preparing for war, yes, but their preparations were desperate and hopeless. Nothing suggested they had secret superweapons, yet doubt remained. What if someone had found something? What if there was a project so secret that even most of the government did not know about it? Soyeongyam was a journalist. She did not work for the government. She worked for the truth, or at least that was what she told people. Right now, truth was complicated. She had been investigating Earth's military for months. She had sources inside various programs. She had documents that were probably classified. And she had found something interesting. On day 70 of the Council's ultimatum, Earth's military had moved 3 experimental ships to the outer solar system. The ships had been testing some kind of new propulsion system. They had been in the same region where the Council fleet had been. And gathering, Soyoung published her findings. What were those ships really doing? She asked in her article, why were they moved to that exact location? Why won't the military explain their mission? The article caused panic. People who had believed Earth was innocent started having doubts. Maybe the government was lying. Maybe humanity did have secret weapons. Maybe they caused this. The military held a press conference. Admiral Choi looked angry. Those ships were conducting routine testing. They were monitoring the Council fleet. Yes, because we needed to know what we were facing. But they were not armed. They were not dangerous. This is pure speculation. Then why won't you release the mission logs? So Yang called out from the crowd. Because they contain classified information about our sensors and monitoring capabilities. Information that other species might use against us. It was a reasonable answer. It was also suspicious. People believed what they wanted to believe. Meanwhile, explorer Taeyun Nam was leading an expedition to the Council's administrative homeworld. It was called Primara, though humans could barely pronounce the actual name. The planet had been the center of Council power for thousands of years. Now, it was silent. Taeyun's ship descended through an atmosphere that still worked. Automated systems still maintained the weather and climate. But there were no people. The cities were empty. The streets were clean but abandoned. It's like everyone just stood up and walked away, his pilot said. They explored the capital city. Massive buildings that housed the Council's bureaucracy. Libraries filled with the history of 1,000 species. All of it intact. All of it empty. Then Taeyun found the underground facility. It was deep beneath the main government complex. The entrance was hidden, protected by doors that should have been locked. But everything was open now. The security systems had failed when their operators vanished. Taeyun descended into the darkness with his team. Emergency lights flickered on as they moved through corridors. The facility was huge, spreading for kilometers beneath the surface. What is this place? Someone asked. They found the answer in a central chamber. Walls covered in screens. Thousands of displays, each one showing a different planet. Each one labeled with a species name. One screen showed Earth. The label said, Category 7, High Priority Monitoring. They were watching everyone, Taeyun said quietly. His team spread out, examining the facility. They found archives. Records of Council surveillance going back centuries. Every species they had ever contacted. Every world they had ever monitored. And Earth's file was the largest. Taeyun sat at a terminal and started reading. The Council had been watching humanity since the first radio broadcasts leaked into space. They had observed every war, every technological advancement, every small step toward the stars, and they had been afraid. The file contained thousands of analyses. Psychology reports about human behavior, war simulations, threat assessments. All of them reached the same conclusion. Humanity was dangerous. Not because they were violent, though they were. Not because they were aggressive, though they could be. But because they were unpredictable. Other species followed patterns. They could be understood. Humanity kept doing things that should have been impossible. They survived disasters that should have killed them. They adapted to situations they should not have been able to handle. The Council called it catastrophic adaptability. They feared it. Taeyun kept reading. The final entries in Earth's file were from 2 days before the vanishing. A Council analyst had written a report. The translation was rough, but the meaning was clear. Subject species Earth has refused ultimatum. Fleet deployment proceeding as planned. However, this analyst must note concerns about Protocol Omega. Subject species Earth matches 72% of genetic markers flagged by architect protocols. If fleet engagement proceeds, automatic failsafe activation is probable. Recommend immediate recall, an alternative diplomatic approach. The report had been marked urgent, requires High Council review. It had been ignored. Taeyun sat back in his chair, his hands shaking. Protocol Omega. Architect protocols. Genetic markers. None of it made sense yet, but he knew he had found something important. Something that changed everything. He contacted Earth immediately. I'm sending data now. You need to see this. The Council knew. They knew something was going to happen, and they attacked us anyway. The abandoned moon had no name. It orbited a gas giant in a system nobody visited. The charts called it Station 47. Commander Woojin CO had been sent there because of an old council file that mentioned architect ruins. Nobody knew who the architects were. The council had found traces of them across the galaxy. Ruins millions of years old. Technology that still worked after unimaginable time. And no bodies. No records of what happened to them. Just empty buildings and machines that did things nobody understood. Woojin's ship landed near the ruins. They looked like smooth metal grown out of the moon's surface. No seams, no joints. Just perfect curves and shapes that made his eyes hurt if he looked too long. "Be careful," he told his team. "We don't know what any of this does." They explored carefully. The ruins were small compared to other architect sites. Just a few buildings clustered together. But as Woojin approached, something changed. The buildings lit up. Lights appeared along every surface. Soft blue glowing lines that traced patterns through the metal. A door opened where no door had been visible before. "Commander, you need to see this," his engineer called. Inside the building, a room had activated. Screens showed text in a language nobody could read. But as Woojin watched, the text changed. It shifted into Korean, then English, then cycled through every human language he knew. "It's responding to us," he said. A voice spoke. Not from speakers. The air itself seemed to vibrate with sound. Genetic markers confirmed. Descendant species identified. Access granted. "What are you?" Woojin asked. "I am a custodial intelligence left by the architects. I maintain this facility and await the return of descendant populations. We're humans. From Earth. Yes, your genetic structure contains architect base markers. You are one of 7 surviving descendant lines in this galaxy." Woojin felt dizzy. The architects were human? The architects were the root species from which humanity descended. Approximately 4.7 million years ago, an architect colony ship crashed on the world you call Earth. The survivors adapted to local conditions. Over time, they evolved into modern humans. It was impossible. It was insane. But the evidence was right in front of him. "The Council," Woojin said. "Do you know what happened to them?" The Galactic Council activated Protocol Omega. As designed, they have been removed from this dimensional space. "You did it? The architects made them vanish?" The architects created the Council to serve as shepherds, to guide younger species, to prevent catastrophes. But they also installed failsafes. If the Council ever attempted to destroy an architect descendant species, they would be automatically removed. Woojin sat down heavily. His team gathered around, all of them staring at the glowing screens. Dr. Bora Jeng was on his team. She was a xenorchaeologist, someone who studied ancient aliens. She had dreamed about moments like this her whole life. Now it was really happening, and she could barely speak. "Why?" she finally asked. "Why did the architects do this?" The Council was meant to nurture and protect. Destruction of a descendant species represented total mission failure. The failsafe ensured they could not make that mistake. Where are they now? The Council? Stored in dimensional suspension, unchanged, waiting. Waiting for what? For judgment. For a descendant species to decide if they should be restored. The room went silent. Woojin looked at his team. They looked back at him. Nobody knew what to say. "You're telling me," Woojin said slowly, "that humanity can bring the Council back? Or leave them gone forever?" "Correct. The choice belongs to you." Back on Earth, President Dayun Song sat in her office with the reports spread across her desk. Reports from Taeyon on Tramara. Reports from Woojin at the architect facility. Scientific analysis from every expert they could find. All of it pointed to the same conclusion. Humanity had activated an automatic defense system, a trap set by an ancient species millions of years ago. The Council had walked into it by threatening to destroy Earth. What do we do? She asked. Her advisors argued. Some wanted to leave the Council in whatever dimensional prison they were in. The Council had been tyrants. They had ruled through fear. They had destroyed 17 species. They did not deserve mercy. Others argued differently. The Council species were not all guilty. Most were just ordinary people living their lives. Billions of individuals who had nothing to do with their government's decisions. They did not deserve eternal imprisonment. Admiral Kyungmin Lam was firmly in the first group. They threatened us with extinction. They showed us recordings of the species they destroyed. They gave us 90 days to surrender or die. Now they're gone, and frankly, the galaxy is better for it. Billions of people, Ambassador Hai Jinjiang said quietly. Billions, children, families, people who never hurt anyone. You want to leave them in dimensional suspension forever? They were part of a system that murdered entire species. Were they? Most of them probably didn't even know what their government was doing. Just like most humans don't know about our classified military programs. The argument went on for hours, days, weeks. The entire planet debated. Protests filled the streets. Some demanding justice. Others demanding mercy. Humanity had to make a choice, and nobody could agree on what was right. Meanwhile, engineer Jian An was working at the architect facility. She had been sent to learn how to operate the systems. The custodial intelligence was teaching her. This is the control interface for Protocol Omega, it explained. You can restore the Council species to normal space, or you can leave them suspended indefinitely. What happens if we leave them there? They will remain unchanged. Time does not pass in dimensional suspension. They will never age, never wake, never know what happened. That sounds like death. It is not death. It is pause. They could be restored at any time in the future. Jian studied the controls. They were surprisingly simple. One button to restore. One button to leave suspended. The fate of billions of people reduced to a binary choice. What would the architects want us to do? She asked. The architects left the choice to their descendants. They believed that true wisdom came from facing difficult decisions. There is no correct answer. Only the answer you choose. That was not helpful. Then the alerts started. Deep space monitoring stations detected something approaching the solar system. Fast. Very fast. Commander Seung-Ho Han reviewed the data. What am I looking at? Automated defense platforms, the analyst reported. Council technology. Hundreds of them. I thought all Council systems were dead. These are different. They don't need operators. They're pure AI, and they're targeting Earth. The platforms had been positioned throughout Council space. Fail-safes of their own. If Protocol Omega ever activated, if the Council ever vanished, these systems would automatically activate. Their mission was simple. Destroy the species that caused the activation. Destroy humanity. How long until they arrive? Seung-Ho asked. 48 hours. Seung-Ho contacted Earth immediately. President Song listened to his report with growing horror. Can we fight them? Maybe. Our defenses are stronger than they were 3 months ago. But these platforms were designed to destroy planets. Hundreds of them. Even if we win, Earth will be devastated. There was another option. The architect facility could stop the platforms. It had override codes. But only if someone activated the controls. Only if humanity made their choice. Restore the Council and stop the attack. Or let the platforms come and face extinction, defending their decision to leave the Council imprisoned. President Song looked at her advisors, at the military officers, at the diplomats and scientists, at all the people who had argued about mercy and justice for weeks. "We're out of time," she said. "We have to decide now." The automated platforms crossed into the outer solar system like a swarm of metal hornets. Each one was the size of a city. Each one carried weapons that could crack a planet's crust. And there were 473 of them. Colonel Jisoo Park stood in the command center of Earth's primary defense station. Around her, officers coordinated humanity's desperate response. Every ship, every weapon, everything they had. "Deploy the asteroid belt platforms," she ordered. "All defensive satellites to full power. Get every civilian ship away from Earth now." The platforms kept coming. They did not slow. They did not communicate. They were machines following programming written thousands of years ago. Destroy the species that activated Protocol Omega. Destroy humanity. First wave engaging in 20 minutes, someone reported. Jisoo looked at the tactical display. The math was simple. Earth would lose. They might destroy some platforms. Maybe even most of them. But not all. Not enough. On the Architect Facility's moon, Dr. Yejin Kwon worked frantically with the custodial intelligence. There had to be a way to stop the platforms without restoring the Council. Some override code. Some emergency shutdown. The platforms operate independently, the intelligence explained. They cannot be recalled or destroyed remotely. Only Council authority codes can. Deactivate them. And those codes are gone with the Council. Correct. Then we restore the Council just long enough to get the codes and stop the attack. That is not possible. Restoration is permanent. Once the Council returns to normal space, they remain. Yejin wanted to scream. Every option led to disaster. Let the platforms destroy Earth, or restore the Council who had wanted to destroy Earth anyway. Back on Earth, President Song had called an emergency session. Every government representative, every military leader, everyone who had a voice in humanity's future. "We have 20 minutes," she said. "The platforms are almost here. If we're going to restore the Council and get those deactivation codes, it has to be now." "No," Admiral Lim said flatly. "We don't negotiate with terrorists. The Council threatened us. Now their automated systems are attacking us. We fight. Fight with what?" Haijin demanded. "We'll lose. Earth will burn. Everyone will die. For what, Pride? For freedom. For the right to exist without bowing to tyrants. The Council members in suspension aren't tyrants. They're people. Hostages to their own government's mistakes." The argument exploded. Everyone shouting. Nobody listening. The clock ticking down. A young technician named Min-seok Ryu sat in the back of the room. He was not important enough to speak at these meetings. He was just there to maintain the communication systems. But he was also brilliant, and he had been studying the architect data. "Excuse me," he said quietly. Nobody heard him. "Excuse me," he said louder. The room went silent. Everyone looked at him. He felt his face go red. "The protocols," he said quickly. "I've been reading the architect protocols. The failsafe wasn't meant to be permanent. It was meant to be a pause. A forced timeout." "We know that," someone said impatiently. "But you're thinking about it wrong. The architects didn't want the Council destroyed. They wanted them to learn, to change. The restoration protocols don't just bring them back. They give us control over the conditions of their return." President Song leaned forward. "Explain." Min-seok pulled up files on the main screen. "When we restore the Council, we can set parameters. We can change their political structure. We can enforce new laws. The architects built the system to let descendant species remake the council into what it should have been. The room erupted again, but this time with questions instead of arguments. Can we really do that? Would they accept it? Do we have time? In orbit, Jisoo watched the first platforms enter weapons range. Her ships opened fire. Railguns and missiles and particle beams. Everything humanity had learned to build in 3 months of desperate preparation. Some platforms died. Most did not. They fired back. A defense satellite exploded. Then another. We need those codes now, Jisoo said into her communicator. Whatever Earth is deciding, they need to decide faster. At the architect facility, Jian worked with Minseok through video communication. He walked her through the protocols. How to set restoration conditions. How to enforce new governmental structures. How to make sure the council came back different. This is insane, she said. We're rewriting their entire civilization. We're giving them a chance to be better, Minseok replied. The architects built this system because they believed in redemption, in second chances, even for species that made terrible mistakes. Jian's hands moved over the controls. The interface was responding. She was really doing this. On Earth, President Song had to make the call. They were out of time. The platforms were tearing through humanity's defenses. People were dying. Do it, she said. Jian pressed the activation sequence. Reality bent. Every human in the galaxy felt it. A moment of vertigo. A sense of the universe shifting. And then it was over. The council returned. But they returned to a different galaxy. Every council member woke up in their homes. In their ships. In their offices. Exactly where they had been 3 months ago. But everything had changed. New laws appeared in every database. Laws that no council member could ignore or remove. Laws about species rights. About democratic representation. About limits on council authority. The architects had built the system to be absolute. The council had no choice but to obey. And most importantly, the automated platform stopped in orbit around Earth. Jisoo watched her sensors. The platforms were powering down, withdrawing. The attack was over. Stand down, she ordered her ships. Cease fire. Across the galaxy, council members tried to understand what had happened. They remembered their normal lives. Then nothing. Then waking up to a changed universe. Some were confused. Some were angry. Many were terrified. They learned quickly. The architects had protected humanity, had protected all descendant species. The council had tried to destroy Earth, and the failsafe had activated. They had been judged and found wanting. Now they were back. But only because humanity had shown them mercy. Captain Hyen-Woo Park, who had witnessed the first council message 3 months ago, watched as new transmissions came from council space. They were different now, respectful, apologetic, uncertain. Council representative who appeared on screens was the same being with 4 eyes and metallic skin. But the arrogance was gone. People of Earth, it said, we have wronged you. We understand now what we were, what we had become. The architects built a system to stop us from our worst impulses. You had the power to leave us in suspension forever. You chose mercy instead. We do not deserve this kindness, but we will spend generations trying to earn it. 5 years passed. The galaxy transformed. The council still existed, but as equals rather than rulers. Species that had been subjects became partners. Wars that might have happened never started. Peace held, fragile but real. Ambassador Ji-won. Kim, who had tried so hard to negotiate with the old council, now served in the new Galactic Assembly. She represented Earth in a chamber where every species had a voice, where decisions required consensus rather than demands. Her daughter Senna was 10 years old now. She attended an interstellar school with students from 40 different worlds. She made friends with alien children. She learned languages that had no human sounds. She grew up in a galaxy that her mother had helped save. The question that haunted the first contact was simple. Could humanity survive meeting the Council? The answer turned out to be yes. But the question that mattered more was different. Could the Council survive meeting humanity? They had, but only because humanity chose mercy over vengeance. Only because, when given the power to destroy their enemies, humans decided to save them instead. It was not a decision that made sense to many species. The galaxy had operated on principles of strength and dominance for thousands of years. Humanity broke those rules. They showed that power did not require cruelty. That strength could include forgiveness. On Earth, monuments were built to the 3 months of fear. Museums displayed the recordings of those days. Children learned about the time aliens tried to destroy humanity, and humanity saved them anyway. Some people called it weakness. Most called it wisdom. A few called it the moment when humanity truly became what the architects had hoped their descendants would be. President Song, now retired, gave one final interview on the 10th anniversary of First Contact. "People ask me if we made the right choice," she said. "I don't know. We saved billions of lives. We also let our attackers survive. Maybe that was foolish. Maybe future generations will curse us for it. But I believe that mercy is never truly wrong, even when it's hard, even when it's dangerous. Because the alternative is a galaxy where power is everything, and kindness is weakness. I don't want to live in that galaxy." The reporter asked, "Do you think the Council has really changed?" Song smiled. "I think they have to. We built the architects' protocols into their system. They physically cannot return to their old ways. But more than that, they remember. Every Council member remembers waking up and learning they had been judged, that they had been removed from existence, and only restored through mercy they didn't deserve. That's a lesson that changes people. What about humanity? How have we changed?" Song thought about that. "We learned that we're not alone, that we're part of something bigger and older than we knew. We're descendants of the architects, and they trusted us with the power to reshape the galaxy. We could have used that power to take revenge. Instead, we used it to build something better. I think that says everything about what humanity can be." Somewhere in deep space, the architect facility still hummed with power. The custodial intelligence waited, as it had waited for millions of years. Other descendant species existed. Other worlds where architect colonies had crashed or settled. Maybe someday they would face their own tests, their own moments of choice. The intelligence did not know if they would pass those tests, if they would show the same mercy humanity had shown. But it believed they could. The architects had seeded the galaxy with hope, with the possibility that intelligence could evolve beyond cruelty, that civilizations could learn and grow and become better. Humanity proved it was possible. That was enough. That had to be enough. The galaxy would remember. And in remembering, perhaps other species would find their own path to wisdom. The story of the Council who threatened Earth and vanished became legend, told on 1,000 worlds, studied by countless scholars. And always, the lesson remained the same. Power without mercy is tyranny. Mercy without wisdom is weakness. But power guided by wisdom and tempered with mercy, that could change everything. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy. Not weapons, not technology, not strength, but the simple, difficult choice to show kindness to those who did not deserve it. And in that choice, they saved more than the Council. They saved the possibility of a better future for everyone.